Even before receiving the powers that would eventually go on to define her life, Carol Danvers was a rising star. Born to John and Marie Danvers, the latter of which was secretly a Kree agent, Carol grew up having a rocky relationship with her father, who never seemed to support her ambitions despite demonstrating the aptitude for them. It does bear mentioning that her half-Kree lineage is a relatively recent development, almost surely meant to line up with a portrayal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Joining the Air Force at the age of 18, Carol rose to the top of her class, eventually becoming the best pilot of her unit. Her call sign was Cheeseburger, an inside joke amongst her unit referring to an incident where she ended up throwing up after a gravitational test. After a botched recon mission that saw her captured and tortured for a few days, she was recruited into a Special Operations Air Force unit which saw her working alongside characters like Nick Fury, as well as a pre-Fantastic Four Ben Grimm and a pre-X-Men Logan. She'd later frequently crossed paths during her stint as head of security at the Kennedy Space Center with Mar-Vell, the first Captain Marvel. As the two grew closer, she was kidnapped by Yon-Rogg as an act of revenge against Mar-Vell. During the ensuing conflict, Carol was caught in the detonation of a device called the Psyche Magnetron. Mar-Vell saved her, but unbeknownst to either of them, the device had altered Carol's genetic structure and activated her latent powers. She'd begin her superhero career as Miss Marvel, though she'd create an alternate personality that she would snap into to access her superpowers. After burning bridges with the military and NASA, she'd engage in heroics all across the Marvel Universe, fighting alongside the Avengers most prominently, while also maintaining a civilian life as an editor of a women's magazine run by J. Jonah Jameson. She'd most infamously have a few run-ins with the mutant Mystique, who had her protege Rogue use her mutant absorption powers on her. This put Carol into a comatose state, as well as drained her powers completely, while at the same time, giving Rogue the flight and superhuman strength she'd come to be famous for from that point on. She was rescued by Spider-Woman and, thanks to the X-Men, reclaimed her soul, but was still powerless. Nevertheless, she formed a bond with the X-Men and became an ally of theirs. After being kidnapped and subjected to experiments by the Brood, an alien race that the X-Men combat on a regular basis, her latent powers were reawakened and pushed to new heights, thanks to her powers being linked to a white hole. Coming up with the name Binary, she'd go on further adventures with the X-Men, though she'd end up severing ties with them over Xavier's newest recruit to the X-Men, Rogue. She'd later lose her binary powers after using them to help reignite the sun, burning her out. She'd rejoin the Avengers as Warbird, though her recklessness, despite the aforementioned weakening of her powers, eventually led to her quitting the team. She'd again take up the Miss Marvel name for a while, but things changed when the Phoenix Force began making its way towards Earth. After a freshly resurrected Mar-Vell gave his life to mitigate the damage from the Phoenix Force, Carol was inspired to live up to the legacy he left behind, and formally took up the mantle of Captain Marvel. As Captain Marvel, Carol has the ability to absorb, redirect, and even project her own energy, alongside flight and superhuman strength. Her first appearance in the Versus series was, funnily enough, as a Heroes and Heralds card in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 in her Miss Marvel persona. Her first formal playable appearance in the series was in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, being one of the headlining characters of the game alongside Mega Man X, Iron Man, and Ryu. Given how much more prominent she's been in the Marvel Universe since taking up the Captain Marvel mantle, it's no surprise she was one of the front and center characters in the game's promotion. As someone that personally wanted her in Marvel 3, I was happy to see her get into Infinite, where she's to this day one of my mains. Her voice actor in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is Gray DeLisle. I can't even begin to name all of the work she's done in the industry, but if you're watching this video, you've absolutely heard her in multiple things before. It does bear mentioning that she's played Captain Marvel in some other extended Marvel media like cartoons as well. With all that said, let's get started on her moveset. Captain Marvel is a relatively straightforward character. While she has a projectile, the vast majority of her moveset favors rushdown and letting her start her offense uninterrupted. Fitting fighting game design for someone that often recklessly flies headfirst into battle despite their better judgment. Captain Marvel's theme is a somewhat upbeat sounding orchestral piece. I think it's pretty okay. Nothing really mind-blowing, but there's definitely way more boring music in this game. First off, she has some command normals we need to talk about. First is sliding straight. This is a low hitting, advancing normal. Next is Smash Hook. This one can slide in neatly into her ground strings. Her third command normal is Turn Kick, done with forward and heavy kick. This one's a little slower than Smash Hook, but still has its uses.
Cool.
Photon Impact is an aerial command normal.
Attack.
It can thankfully be comboed into and out of, though note that she pops up a bit high when connecting with this, so be mindful with height-specific air combos. Down in Heavy Kick is a sliding kick that covers a decent amount of ground.
Yes. Spectacular.
Her first special move is Photon Blast, done with a quarter circle forward in any punch.
Yes.
Photon Blast!
This has a decent amount of durability, and the heavy variation goes at a diagonally upwards angle. Blitz Blow is done by pressing two kick buttons simultaneously.
Blitz Blow! Blitz Blow! Blitz Blow!
This is an attack that can be aimed 8 ways depending on what direction you're pressing. Input and use case wise, it's very similar to Wolverine's Drill Claw in past Versus games, with the additional benefit of being able to easily combo off of it. Strike Flurry is done with a quarter circle back and punch.
Strike Flurry!
Yes.
No escape! Strike Flurry!
This is a series of quick strikes with an ender that depends on which punch button was pressed. Light Punch ends with an upwards kick. This kick is jump cancelable and can be followed up into an air combo. The light version in the air knocks the opponent back down onto the ground, though you can continue the combo if you haven't used up an OTG attack yet. Heavy Punch ends with a throw. Carol throws the opponent just about full screen, but if it's done in the corner, it wall bounces and can be comboed off of. Photon Absorber is done by pressing down, down, and kick.
Absorber!
This is an interesting buff move that grants super armor and allows her to tank light attacks and projectiles. The duration and startup is determined by the kick button pressed. Light Kick has a short duration with a fast startup, but Heavy Kick has a slower startup but longer overall duration. Be aware that it still loses the supers though. Takeoff is a command grab done by doing a half circle back and kick.
Take off!
You can combo off of this in and outside of the corner, though you might need to slide to close the distance if you land this mid-screen. Given her background as a US Air Force pilot, it makes sense that she has a move of this name. Quarter circle back and two kicks activates her flight. Carol is unsurprisingly a character with 8-way air dashes, very much in the vein of series mainstays like Magneto and Storm. Because she has flight, she can also perform flight staircase combos, which are generally looped fierce punches during her flight state. Most characters with flight in this game, like Ultron and Dormammu, can perform these, and comboing it into Heavy Strike Flurry allows her to continue the combo with an OTG. Her first hyper combo is Power Blaster, done with a quarter circle forward in 2 punches.
You're gonna feel this! Power Blaster!
Maximum.
Note that this special does a very small amount of damage to Carol herself. More on that in a sec. This can also be done in the air. Her second hyper combo is Binary Ignition. This is an install super that has her tap into her binary powers, which grants some buffs. Her damage across the board is better while binary is active, and some of her specials get new properties. In addition to more damage and hits, Photon Blast gets a slightly larger hitbox. Heavy Strike Flurry now ground bounces after the wall bounce. And Heavy Takeoff also ground bounces now as well. There is one not immediately noticeable caveat though. In spite of the aforementioned buffs, her binary form has way harsher hit stun decay on just about all of her attacks, so a lot of her most optimal bread and butter combos in her base form don't actually work when binary ignition is active. She also very slowly loses health while this install is active. This actually carries over to her Power Blaster super and her level 3, which she goes into binary form for. It's not enough health to worry about unless you're a few pixels away from dying though. On that note, let's talk about her binary form for a bit. Carol's binary form was a level of power she first obtained when being experimented on by the Brood, an invasive alien species that frequently battles the X-Men. While her standard powers were of a known quantity, her original binary form's upper limits are a lot harder to measure. She ends up losing this as a permanent form after using her powers to reignite the sun, which subsequently burns out her binary powers. Her ability to absorb energy, which was first granted to her as binary, remained as a core ability of hers, even after this. Later on, after absorbing a large amount of energy in an encounter with an energy-based being known as the Collective, she's able to tap into her binary powers again, albeit temporarily. From that point onwards, she can use her binary powers, but only after absorbing mass amounts of energy first. She'll intentionally invoke this in emergencies when she desperately needs the power boost every now and then. At one point, she's also able to tap into her binary powers and forms an energy-based clone of herself based on that persona to free her from a trap, though they'd later die in battle. She can seemingly channel binary at will in Marvel Infinite, but I'd have to imagine it's because the designers wanted to give her a straightforward install instead of one that might have had a prerequisite, like absorbing a certain amount of hits with Photon Absorber or something. Her level 3 is Stellar Stream, done with a quarter circle back in 2 punches.
Maximum!
I'll use everything I've got! Tonight! Ah! Stellar Stream!
Maximum!
This is a pretty standard level 3, though because she goes into her binary form for this, she loses a microscopic bit of health for using this. Cool attack name though. Let's talk comics for a bit. Captain Marvel's comic book history is, well, she's had her ups and downs. She's been a part of some decent stories, and also victim of some of the worst stuff ever written in Marvel. She's had some good runs here and there throughout her entire history though. Kelly Sue DeConnick has a pretty great run that starts right after Carol formally took up the Captain Marvel mantle, and Kelly Thompson also has a run later down the line that's also a decent read. That said, my personal favorite, and the one that actually got me interested in the character, actually comes from her time as Miss Marvel in the mid to late 2000s. This video's comic book recommendation is Brian Reed's run on Miss Marvel. This run starts off not too long before the events of Civil War and spins off from Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers run. Carol, having been offered a spot on the New Avengers, declines and decides to fly solo, not confident that she had earned the right to rejoin the team. That mentality sort of forms the core of her character in this run. This book also takes place after House of M, a whole big story where Scarlet Witch essentially created a new reality with different lives for everyone in the Marvel Universe. In the House of M reality, she went by Captain Marvel and was regarded as one of the world's most beloved superheroes. Once Scarlet Witch had her breakdown and everything went back to normal, some characters like Spider-Man retained their memories of their lives in that reality, and Carol was one of them. This paints her main drive in this series, to be the best hero she can possibly be, but it's a long and difficult road for her. This series, I think, more than most others, really zeroes into some of her character flaws like her recklessness and her habit of making some poor judgment calls in the heat of the moment, but finds ways for her to overcome them and even turn them into strengths. Everyone loves a good underdog story, and reading the run as it follows her through the events of Civil War, Secret Invasion, and Dark Reign does a good job of posing the question of what it really means to be the best hero out there. Her decisions from joining the Registration Act and Civil War in particular get explored, as well as the apparent resurrection of the original Captain Marvel during Secret Invasion, and near the end of the run, she has a showdown with Moonstone, who at that point had been a part of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers team, masquerading as Miss Marvel for the public. She's kind of a mess sometimes here, and that kinda makes her even easier to root for. Sometimes, we don't all have our shit together, and that's okay. but the real heroes are the ones that don't dwell on it and push forward. This run is about 50 issues long, and admittedly, it has some ups and downs. But I think it's some of the strongest characterization Caro's ever had, and I think it makes for an interesting read. Here are all of Caro's colors. Color 2 is based off of the color scheme of her old binary costume. Color 3 is based on the color scheme of Phyla-Vel's Captain Marvel costume, one of a handful of people to hold the mantle along with others like Gina's Val. Color 4 is based on the color scheme of the original Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell. He was the first to bear the Captain Marvel name and is the legacy Caro more or less aspires to live up to. His most notable story, morbid as it may be, is The Death of Captain Marvel, a story of his coming to terms with his diagnosis of terminal cancer. It's generally considered to be the Captain Marvel story, at least as far as Mar-Vell is concerned, and the cover of the final issue of the aforementioned Brian Reed Miss Marvel run even pays tribute to it. Caro's one of a handful of characters with 2 alternate color schemes in Marvel Infinite. Her first alternate is her Warbird costume, though it's more commonly associated with her final stint as Miss Marvel before taking up the Captain Marvel mantle. Color 2 is based on the costume color scheme of the person that immediately take up the Miss Marvel mantle after Caro becomes Captain Marvel, Kamala Khan. Color 3 is again based on her binary costume. Color 4 is likely based on her original black and red costume. Her second alternate costume is her pilot uniform. This one was notably a pre-order and first print bonus for the PS4 version of the game, and is notably one of the only instances of a platform-exclusive alternate costume or color in the Versus series, alongside the exclusive color schemes in the Sega Saturn port of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and the PS1 exclusive colors in Marvel vs. Capcom 1. Color 2 seems to be original, but Color 3 is more than likely a nod to the Kree Militia uniform. If I'm wrong about Color 2 though, please do let me know in the comments. Color 4 is based on the color scheme of Monica Rambeau, another person that's going by the Captain Marvel name, though she's also going by other aliases like Photon and Spectrum. Here are all of Captain Marvel's character interactions.
Captain Marvel.
Let's do this, sister. You're not using one of Tony's extra suits, are you?
Let's go, Zero. Together, no one can stop us.
Avenger versus Avenger. Great. How many times do we have to do this?
Don't step any closer, unless you've got a death wish.
Hey, I said no pictures. Give them to me, or else.
Pics of heroes turned evil? That's a gold mine.
Star-Lord's gonna be mad when he finds out about what you're doing. Consider that offer to join the Avengers rejected. Crack a smile once in a blue moon, huh?
Target confirmed. Commencing operation.
Should have taken you down when I had the chance.
Your magics will serve me well.
I can't let evil slide by when it's right in front of me. You even act the slightest bit evil, you know what I'll do.
If we win, I get a penthouse suite in Avengers Tower.
So it all comes down to this.
Fools, our will is law. We will destroy you.
I will defeat you and end this once and for all.
Do you think you can defeat us?
You ought to know by now, Steve. I outrank
That's some serious tech.
you. You play good cop, and I'll play bad cop.
I have my orders. Nothing personal.
Compared to the threats to the galaxy that we've faced, this is easy.
Don't be such a downer. Smile.
No armor, no shield, no hammer, no arrows? Interesting.
You can't protect a city, let alone its citizens.
I need to see all the pictures you took of me. Understand?
Why does it always seem that we end up fighting each other?
I'm keeping an eye on you, so you'd better not try anything funny.
Hey, trying to take a picture here!
This is probably going to be a running theme with videos on characters introduced in Infinite, but Captain Marvel is actually pretty well done in this game, I think. She's pretty straightforward in design here, and that makes sense, since she's arguably the game's flagship Marvel character alongside Iron Man opposite of Ryu and Mega Man X. Personally, I'd have liked to see a move where she absorbs and redirects projectiles, or even a small shout out to Rogue's moveset given her history with her, but I'm otherwise okay with what we got. She, along with Ultron, form one of my main teams in Infinite, and I'm always happy to play her. That said, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.